Hello, chess fans. Today, we're diving into the exciting world of the Blackmar-Diemer Gambit. This aggressive opening is perfect for those who love tactical fireworks. Plus, we'll explore the infamous Halosar Trap, which can lead to a stunning checkmate in just 9 moves. Let's jump right in. The Blackmar-Diemer Gambit starts with the moves d4, d5, e4. This gambit offers white great chances for an early initiative and is especially effective against unprepared opponents. After d takes e4, white plays knight to c3, putting pressure on the e4 pawn. In response, black defends by moving the knight to f6. White plays f3, aiming to reclaim the pawn while opening lines for an aggressive attack. The key here is to create imbalances and make your opponent feel uncomfortable right from the start. E takes f3. White can respond by recapturing with either the queen or the knight. While the knight offers a more solid position, taking with the queen sets up the opportunity for the Halosar Trap. Black captures the pawn on d4 with the queen. In response, white develops the bishop to e3, attacking the queen. Black then moves the queen to b4. Long castle. Black develops the bishop to g4, skewering white's queen and rook. Ignoring the threat, white jumps the knight to b5. In a moment of opportunity, black captures the queen, thinking they've gained the upper hand. However, white has a surprise in store. With a stunning knight takes c7, they deliver a brilliant checkmate. Here are a few games showcasing my attempts to play the Blackmar-Diemer Gambit. Game 1 starts with d4, d5, e4, d takes e4, knight to c3, bishop to f5, f3, knight to f6. I develop my bishop to g5. Black plays e takes f3. I recapture with my queen. My opponent moves the bishop to g4, putting pressure on my queen. In response, I capture the pawn on b7 with my queen. Knight b to d7. h3. My opponent retreats the bishop to h5. I move my knight to b5. They shift the rook to b8, attacking my queen. In this position, can you find the best move for white? I capture the pawn on c7 with my knight, delivering check. The only legal move for my opponent is to take my knight with the queen, allowing me to win their queen. My opponent continues with knight to d5, putting pressure on my queen. I respond by moving my queen to c6. e6. I develop my bishop to b5. Knight to b6. Knight to f3. Rook to c8. Queen to b7. My opponent develops the bishop to d6. I capture the knight on d7 with my bishop. Realizing I would win the rook on the next move, my opponent decides to resign. Game 2 starts with d4, d5, e4, d takes e4, knight to c3, knight to f6, f3, e takes f3. I recapture with my queen. e6. I develop my bishop to e3. Knight to c6. Long castle. My opponent develops the bishop to d6. I advance my knight to b5. Short castle. I capture the bishop on d6. My opponent responds by taking my knight. I move my bishop to g5. My opponent slides the queen to a5. I capture the knight on f6. My opponent takes my bishop. King to b1. Queen slides to g5. h4. Queen retreats to g6. Bishop to d3. Queen retreats to g7. h5. f5. d5. My opponent moves the knight to d4, putting pressure on my queen. I retreat my queen to f2. e5. I develop my knight to e2. We exchange knights. f4. Rook d to g1. King to h8. g3. Queen slides to f6. h6. Rook to g8. G takes f4. We exchange rooks. Queen takes f4. Queen to g2. Bishop to g4. I capture the bishop with my queen. My opponent takes the pawn on h6. Bishop to d3. Rook to f8. Queen to f3. Queen to h4. Rook to h1. e4. I capture the pawn. f5. I capture the queen. My opponent resigns. Game 3 starts with d4. d5. e4. D takes e4. Knight to c3. Knight to c6. d5. Knight to e5. Bishop to f4. Knight to g6. Bishop to g3. My opponent develops the other knight to f6. I move my bishop to b5, delivering check. Bishop to d7. Bishop to c3. a6. Knight g to e2. b5. Bishop to b3. Knight to h5. Knight takes e4. Bishop to g4. h3. Bishop to f5. Knight to c5. We trade pieces. Bishop to c8. Short castle. Queen to d6. Knight c to e4. Queen to e5. Rook to e1. Queen takes b2. Queen to f3. f6. d6. Bishop to b7. I capture the pawn on f6, delivering check. My opponent responds by taking my knight. I then capture the bishop. If my opponent moves the rook, can you find forced checkmate? White moves the queen to c6, delivering check. Black blocks with the rook. White then slides the queen to a8, checking again. Black responds by blocking with the rook once more. White pushes the pawn to d7, delivering check, forcing the king to take on d7. White moves the rook to d1, delivering another check. The king is forced to e8. Finally, white plays queen takes d8, delivering checkmate. Back to the game. My opponent resigns. Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate your support. Don't forget to subscribe and tap that notification bell so you can stay updated with all our latest content.